Alright, what is going on, sports card fiends? We are back again with another video, and in today's video we're going to be going over the NBA bubble bursting a little bit as far as cards go. Some drastically, some still on the rise, but could be good examples of what's to come, and other ones that you would think should be on the rise, but are pretty stagnant and kind of just starting to dip a little without much reason. So basically, there are going to be, a couple exceptions. We'll talk about those, but the couple exceptions I don't think are going to be the rule. I don't think that's how that works. I think they're just going to be exceptions to the rule and might even, fall under the bursting bubble. But we'll see. Only time will tell. As far as why I think that this is happening, I mean, you can kind of tell that it's starting to happen. But as far as what contributes to this, personally, I think that, if you've been in the card hobby for a bit, you know that NBA cards have been on an insane tear for a very long time now. And over the last 6 months, 8 months, they have been on just an astronomical tear. So once the season ends, or once the season's getting close to ending even, there's going to be some regression. And really, it's that. It's been a huge tear. Probably some regression is due to happen. In addition to that, the off-season is coming, whether or not we like to think of it that way or not. I know in Sports Card Investor's most recent video, he said that people have spoken lies, that the off-season's not true. And I personally don't agree with that. I think that he used some examples. Like I said, there are exceptions to the rule. And in addition to that, the examples he used were like football cards kicking up over the last month. And, we've been through 5 to 6 months of off-season at this point. So I'd imagine they start kicking up a little bit beforehand. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's not true. And then the final couple things that are maybe going against the NBA card hype is that now the NBA and basketball isn't the only sport really that's up and running. Football's going to get going. Baseball's been kind of going, but I don't think baseball and basketball really rival too much in terms of fans. But football's kicking back up, and soccer as well is starting to get going, and we saw some hype kind of inch up recently with that. So yeah, a lot of things going against it. And like I always say, sports cards are about the now. It's where the eyeballs are right now. And teams are definitely starting to leave the bubble. We've already eliminated a little over half. And with each couple weeks, we'll be eliminating half and half and half again. And you just can't expect those guys to go up in price just because maybe they made an Eastern Conference Finals, except for someone maybe like Jamal Murray, who's just been having himself a tear. But even then, he's probably going to go out to the Clippers. But that's all the talking we'll do while you stare at my face. How about we look at some card prices and, try to rationalize what's going on. So this was just someone I was looking at. So what I want to say is here, this is an example that cards is all about eyeballs. I didn't even want to talk about this, but I was just looking at it, and his price has kind of stayed steady and even kicked back up a bit, all because he won Improved Player of the Year. No one really cares. Like, when you're buying a dude's card 10 years down the line, are you going to be like, oh yeah, he won Most Improved? It's like, no, it doesn't matter. So people that do that are crazy. Just a thought. So the first one we'll start with is Kobe. This is trying to show you that this might be a market-wide thing. It's not just a, who's losing and who's getting knocked out of the playoffs right now. So obviously, this huge kick-up was back when the incident happened. And since then, he just kind of trends with what cards are doing overall with basketball, having the huge kind of bump through May. And then as we got to the playoffs even, his cards continued to rise. And it's kind of weird that, obviously Kobe cards would just double because the bubble's going on. But I guess that's how this works. And then, naturally starts to come back down. I'm not really sure why. I feel like it's just, the rising tide floats all the ships. So whenever people see everything else kind of doubling, they're like, well, what's the next best thing to put my money in? And then they're like, Kobe. But it doesn't really make too much sense. You can't live in the now. And that's something I try to preach as much as I can. You have to live either ahead or behind. You can't be right where everyone's at. You gotta be one or the other. If you're behind, you might be able to catch it on the dip. If you're ahead, you'll be able to catch it before. You don't want to live where the hype beasts live. And that's, I think, a good example of what's kind of going on here with the Kobe. Another player that will signify kind of what's going on here is Luka, his PSA base 10. If we go to like a 3-month scale, you'll see that going into the bubble, he's about 1,100, 1,300, I guess not, closer to 11. And then when he reached his peak, when he's doing Luka type things, he got up to a little over 2K and, started to drop back down a bit, came back up. And so, yeah, about 1.8K for a significant amount of time. And now he's down to little under 1.4 and could continue to keep dropping. That's something I'm going to say with this basketball bubble bursting. If we go on a year-long trend, I mean, obviously these cards have been just going up an insane amount for quite a while now. So I wouldn't buy too early is what I'm saying. I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, this is probably the lowest we'll see. I would let this play out for a couple months, and if you see a real dip that you like, if it starts to steady out, then it's probably a good time to buy. But as long as it's just going down and going down and going down week after week after week, I wouldn't try to, be brave and buy on the dip. Wait until it steadies, wait until maybe you see some increase, and you might not have gotten it at the absolute rock bottom, but at least you got it at a safer moment in time than purchasing this right now. Another example of someone that has gotten knocked out of the bubble and has shown quite a lot. Like, I mean, him and Luka, I wouldn't put them in the same category of player. I think Luka's definitely better, but in terms of what they showed this postseason, I mean, Donovan Mitchell was quite the show. So as we can see here, it started to get up to about $600 before the bubble. He was about $300, so doubled, and as you can tell, already back down to below $400. So again, looking at a year-long trend, where is this going to be long term? I mean, look, in March he was $80 to $100. So maybe if he drops to like 200, 250, that seems pretty safe. But at the end of the day, like I said before, you just have to wait and see with these cards, because when something jumps this high, this quick, you never know where it's going to drop to, really. It's just so hard to gauge. So don't try to be the first one to buy. Be a little late. Be patient if you have to. And what I forgot to mention is, and I mean, it's pretty obvious, but, this big dip that we're seeing right now, this is while NBA games are still going on, while people still have eyes on basketball. Once basketball is done, there's still going to be, obviously like 2 to 3 more months before the basketball season kicks back off. And even once it kicks back off, the hype for basketball doesn't really start until a few months in, by the time everything gets going. So you have a ton of time. You just don't fret. You'll be okay. You can find the cards you like at a nice dip price. Just don't try to be the first one to buy on the dip. And on to Jamal Murray. I mean, this is a nice comp for Donovan Mitchell because obviously they just, balled out for an entire series. Prices started to dip in anticipation of them losing, and then suddenly, once you start winning the series, it's gone right back up. And right now it's a 1-1 series. I'd imagine they still get swept. So this is probably the peak. If you're selling right here, you're absolutely killing the game, especially when you could buy these, even in as much as June for $100. Like, it's 7 times what it was in June. And like we showed with Luka, I mean, people have found out that Luka is the real deal, and he is essentially back to the same price he was pre-bubble. So, even if you think Jamal Murray's now the real deal, will he be at the price he is pre-bubble? Maybe not. Maybe not ever again. Who knows? But I mean, the price pre-bubble is like $200, about $250, somewhere in there. So it's like, I would definitely wait some time. Like I'm saying, just don't buy in the now. I don't know who these people are that are buying at these peaks, but it's not the play. It really isn't, because this is a good time to show it, and this is kind of always what I go back to whenever I talk about a young guy that has won on the big stage. What happens to his price? Now, obviously, if you look at the year-long trend here, you'll be like, well, Patrick Mahomes cards went up a ton. Yes, sure. Also, during the offseason, football gained a ton of traction. Cards gained a ton of traction. He signed a massive mega contract. So there's a lot more that's going into this. And maybe long-term, whoever wins the championship does kind of have that bump up, but it is by no means instant, because back here, this is when Mahomes is doing it. This is when he is winning the championship. And then, I mean, his card prices essentially do nothing. Even when they spike in March, he still goes back down to 300. So, I mean, this entire time, it is hype, it is hype, it is hype. And, it's between $150, $200 for his card. And then after winning a Super Bowl as a young guy in the league that could potentially in the future solidify like GOAT status, like that's what people think of him as, his cards only went $300. So he either doubled or got 50% more of your money back on him. And I feel like, once you see Jamal Murray's cards have gone up 7x since the beginning of the bubble, how can you expect, I mean, what, they're just going to like whenever they win this series, are they going to go up to 1,000? Then whenever they win the next series, theoretically always, are they just going to go 2, 4? Like, no, there's going to be a reasonable spot that they just stop at, and then they go down. Because even if you end up winning, it doesn't mean that your cards just go on some crazy trajectory, because that just isn't it. And then, not that I have to hammer home that it's a good idea to sell right now for Jamal, because it definitely would look like that to anyone that owns him. But this is what happens when you have, some big games and then just get beat by a team that's obviously better than you. Damian Lillard's cards pre-bubble were about 1,000 for the PSA 10 base, and they shot all the way up to 3. That's not even as close to the Jamal Murray jump that we've seen. But even given that, they went up 3 times what they originally were going into the bubble, and now they are back down to about what they were at going into the bubble. And it's just like, I don't know. If you have any of these cards of players that are still playing, I feel like it just shows you that, they aren't going to last. Like all cards, like I say, the price is just based on eyeballs. It's all it is. And as soon as the eyeballs are gone, whether that be because the season's over, whether that be because a player did poorly or just got knocked out, I mean, even if they won it all, the eyeballs fade at the end of the day. And then you got to wait 3 to 4 months. And in that 3 to 4 months, even if your card goes up, it's not going to go up relatively better than, something that would be in another sport. If you had soccer cards, if you have football cards, if you had, whatever cards you're into, that are in season, they're always going to do better because that's where the eyeballs are at. So, and then finally, just to kind of hammer this home a bit more, Kawhi, wherever you stand on the Kawhi, LeBron, Clippers, Lakers, all of that, you can see in his prices right here over the last, we'll go with the month graph. Basically, the beginning of the bubble, they're 4,200. They've won out their first series pretty handily. It wasn't. Obviously, Luka gave him a little bit of a scare, but I felt like they always kind of had it, and they are basically exactly where they were at a month ago. If we look on a 3-month scale, pre-bubble, they were still 4K, and now they're, 4,500. So people aren't, getting any more hyped about these guys as they get further. Obviously, I feel like everyone's waiting for that Clippers-Lakers matchup, but at the end of the day, I feel like it's not necessarily going to show you too much. And, when it comes to cards, obviously people live in the now, and that's what the graphs are about now. But long-term, whether or not Kawhi or LeBron, maybe more so Kawhi, a championship could definitely solidify him a bit more up there. But like a LeBron, he's 3-6 in the finals. Personally love LeBron. I'm from Ohio. That's how that works. But, we'll go look at his cards right now, a little PSA 10 base tops. I guess, yeah, we'll go with the tops instead of the tops chrome. But over a 3-month span, you can see right here. We'll put that on the big screen. But going into the bubble was about 6K, somewhere around there. And right now, 5.2. And the Lakers haven't looked great, but to think that, both Kawhi and LeBron cards essentially have just stayed exactly even and nothing's really happened, you got to count on them to whoever you have. You have to count on them to beat the other and then beat whoever comes out of the East. So it's not great odds that you're working with. And even if you hit those odds, it's still not worth that risk because you're not going to get the bump up that you're hoping for. And like I was saying with LeBron, he's 3-6. So what? He becomes 4-6. Everyone that's on the LeBron train, still on it. Everyone that hates LeBron still hates him. There's not an increase in demand. And at the end of the day, and maybe there might be in the short term, but long term, demand's the same. Whenever you are, getting into these cards and buying them, you have to think about demand. Who's buying that Damian Lillard once it goes up to 3K? Who thinks that it's going to go to 6K? I don't really think that there are people out there that actually believe that. And there's not as many fans to be able to sell those cards to. You need fans as well. And Dame just doesn't have that. And many of these players don't yet either. So when there's no prospect of card prices going up because of what they do in-game, all of the people that are in it for profit are gone. And then you're selling to fans. And are fans willing to pay that increased price? Probably not. So I think that's why at the end of the day, this is just kind of going poorly. But, obviously it's not going poorly. It's going poorly as of late. If you've been buying since the bubble started. Obviously, you're not in a great space, but I could have told you that from the beginning. I feel like why would you be buying when the bubble has started? Why weren't you in on these cards 2 months ahead of time, and why maybe even before that if you're more of a long-term kind of guy? But yeah, that's just my opinion. Obviously, you guys can feel free to disagree, and I'd love to hash out debates in the comments down below. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a like. Anything you want to tell me, like I said, you know where to do it at. And if you guys want to see more videos like this as soon as they go live, make sure to subscribe. And with that said, hopefully you guys have a wonderful day, and peace.